Christ is risen. Christos anesti. Christos voskrese. El Mesichkom. Ha Mashiachkom. Christus resurrexit. Cristo ha resucitado. Christos anviat. Christi uniao. Aristotosu fukatsu. Hidu fuhola. Christo boahashane. 4th Kings, 2nd Kings in Hebrew, chapters 10 and 11. And Achab had 70 sons in Samaria. And Jehu wrote a letter, and sent it to Samaria, to the rulers of Samaria, and to the elders, and to the guardians of the children of Achab, saying, Now then, as soon as this letter shall have reached you, whereas there are with you the sons of your master, and with you chariots, and horses, and strong cities, and arms, do ye accordingly look out the best and fittest among your master's sons, and set them on the throne of his father, and fight for the house of your master. And they feared greatly, and said, Behold, 2 kings stood not before him, and how shall we stand? So they that were over the house, and they that were over the city, and the elders, and the guardians sent to Jehu, saying, We also are thy servants, and whatsoever thou shalt say to us we will do. We will not make any man king. We will do that which is right in thine eyes. And Jehu wrote them a second letter, saying, If ye are for me, and hearken to my voice, take the heads of the men of your master's sons, and bring them to me at this time tomorrow in Jezreel. Now the sons of the king were 70 men. These great men of the city brought them up. And it came to pass, when the letter came to them, that they took the king's sons and slew them, even 70 men, and put their heads in baskets, and sent them to him at Jezreel. And a messenger came and told him, saying, They have brought the heads of the king's sons. And he said, Lay them in 2 heaps by the door of the gate until morning. And the morning came, and he went forth and stood, and said to all the people, Ye are righteous. Behold, I conspired against my master, and slew him. But who slew all these? Seeing now that there shall not fall to the ground anything of the word of the Lord, which the Lord spoke against the house of Achab. For the Lord has performed all that he spoke by the hand of his servant Elihu. And Jehu smote all that were left of the house of Achab in Jezreel, and all his great men, and his acquaintance, and his priests, so as not to leave any remnant. And he arose and went to Samaria, and he was in the house of sheep shearing in the way. And Jehu found the brethren of Ochazias, king of Judah, and said, Who are ye? And they said, We are the brethren of Ochazias, and we have come down to salute the sons of the king, and the sons of the queen. And he said, Take them alive. And they slew them at the shearing house, 42 men. He left not a man of them. And he went thence, and found Jonadab, the son of Rechab, coming to meet him. And he saluted him, and Jehu said to him, Is thy heart right with my heart, as my heart is with thy heart? And Jonadab said, It is. And Jehu said, If it is, then give me thy hand. And he gave him his hand, and he took him up into the chariot. And he said to him, Come with me, and see me zealous for the Lord. And he caused him to sit in his chariot. And he entered into Samaria, and smote all that were left of Achab in Samaria, until he had utterly destroyed him, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke to Elihu. And Jehu gathered all the people, and said to them, Achab served Baal a little. Jehu shall serve him much. Now then, do all ye the prophets of Baal call all his servants and his priests to me. Let not a man be wanting. For I have a great sacrifice to offer to Baal. Every one who shall be missing shall die. But Judah did in subtlety, that he might destroy the servants of Baal. And Jehu said, Sanctify a solemn festival to Baal. And they made a proclamation. And Jehu sent throughout all Israel, saying, Now then, let all Baal's servants and all his priests and all his prophets come. Let none be lacking, for I am going to offer a great sacrifice. Whosoever shall be missing shall not live. So all the servants of Baal came, and all his priests, and all his prophets. There was not one left who came not. And they entered into the house of Baal, and the house of Baal was filled from one end to the other. And he said to the man who was over the house of the wardrobe, Bring forth a robe for all the servants of Baal. And the keeper of the robes brought forth to them. And Jehu and Jonadab, the son of Rechab, entered into the house of Baal, and said to all the servants of Baal, Search, and see whether there is among you any of the servants of the Lord, or only the servants of Baal by themselves. And he went in to offer sacrifices and whole burnt offerings. And Jehu set for himself 80 men without, and said, Every man who shall escape of the men whom I bring into your hand, the life of him that spares him shall go for his life. And it came to pass, when he had finished offering the whole burnt offering, the Jehu said to the footmen and the officers, Go ye in and slay them, let not a man of them escape. So they smote them with the edge of the sword, and the footmen and the officers cast the bodies forth, and went to the city of the house of Baal. And they brought out the pillar of Baal, and burnt it. And they tore down the pillars of Baal, and made his house a draught house until this day. So Jew abolished Baal out of Israel. Nevertheless, Jew departed not from following the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who led Israel to sin. These were the golden heifers in Bethel and in Dan. And the Lord said to Jew, because of all thy deeds wherein thou hast acted well in doing that which was right in my eyes, according to all things which thou hast done to the house of Achab, as they were in my heart, thy sons to the fourth generation shall sit upon the throne of Israel. But you took no heed to walk in the law of the Lord God of Israel with all his heart. He departed not from following the sins of Jeroboam, who made Israel to sin. In those days the Lord began to cut Israel short, and a zeal smote them in every coast of Israel. From Jordan eastward, all the land of Gilead belonging to the Gadites, of Gadi, and that of Reuben, and that of Manasseh, from Aroer, which is on the brink of the brook of Arnon, and Gilead, and Basan, and the rest of the acts of Jew, and all that he did, and all his might, and the wars wherein he engaged. Are not these things written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? And Jew slept with his fathers, and they buried him in Samaria. And Joachaz his son reigned in his stead. And the days which Jew reigned over Israel were 28 years in Samaria. And Gotholiah, the mother of Ochazias, saw that her son was dead, and she destroyed all the seed royal. And Josabee, daughter of King Joram, sister of Ochazias, took Joash, the son of her brother, and stole him from among the king's sons that were put to death, secreting him and his nurse in the bedchamber, and hid him from the face of Gotholiah, and he was not slain. And he remained with her hid in the house of the Lord 6 years, and Gotholiah reigned over the land. And in the 7th year Jodi sent, and took the captains of hundreds of the Korai, and of the Rasim, and brought them to him into the house of the Lord, and made a covenant of the Lord with them, and adjured them. And Jodi showed them the king's son, and charged them, saying, This is the thing which ye shall do. Let a third part of you go in on the Sabbath day, and keep ye the watch of the king's house in the porch. Another third in the gate of the highway, and a third at the gate behind the footmen. And keep ye the guard of the house. And there shall be 2 parties among you, even every one that goes out on the Sabbath, and they shall keep the guard of the Lord's house before the king. And do ye compass the king about every man with his weapon in his hand. And he that goes into the ranges shall die, and they shall be with the king in his going out and his coming in. And the captains of hundreds did all things that the wise Jodi commanded, and they took each his men, both those that went in on the Sabbath day, and those that went out on the Sabbath day, and went into Jodi the priest. And the priest gave to the captains of hundreds the swords and spears of King David that were in the house of the Lord. And the footmen stood, each with his weapon in his hand, from the right corner of the house to the left corner of the house, by the altar and the house round about the king. And he brought forth the king's son, and put upon him the crown, and gave him the testimony. And he made him king, and anointed him. And they clapped their hands, and said, Long live the king. And Gotholiah heard the sound of the people running, and she went into the people to the house of the Lord. And she looked, and behold, the king stood near a pillar according to the manner, and the singers and the trumpeters were before the king, and all the people of the land, even rejoicing and sounding with trumpets. And Gotholiah rent her garments, and cried, A conspiracy, a conspiracy. And Jodi the priest commanded the captains of hundreds who were over the host, and said to them, Bring her forth without the ranges, and he that goes in after her shall certainly die by the sword. For the priest said, Let her not however be slain in the house of the Lord. And he laid hands upon her, and went in by the way of the horses' entrance to the house of the Lord, and she was slain there. And Jodi made a covenant between the Lord and the king and the people, that they should be the Lord's people, also between the king and the people. And all the people of the land went into the house of Baal, and tore it down, and completely broke in pieces his altars and his images, and they slew Mathan, the priest of Baal, before the altars. And the priest appointed overseers over the house of the Lord. And he took the captain of the hundreds, and the Korai, and the Rasim, and all people of the land, and brought down the king of the house of the Lord. And they went in by the way of the gate of the footmen of the king's house, and seated him there on the throne of the kings. And all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was at rest. And they slew Gotholiah with the sword in the house of the king. And Joash was 7 years old when he began to reign. Psalm 106, 107 in Hebrew, verses 15 through 30. Let them acknowledge to the Lord his mercies, and his wonders to the children of men. For he broke to pieces the brazen gates, and crushed the iron bars. He helped them out of the way of their iniquity, for they were brought low because of their iniquities. Their soul abhorred all meat, and they drew near to the gates of death. Then they cried to the Lord in their affliction, and he saved them out of their distresses. He sent his word and healed them, and delivered them out of their destructions. Let them acknowledge to the Lord his mercies, and his wonderful works to the children of men. And let them offer to him the sacrifice of praise, and proclaim his works with exultation. They that go down to the sea in ships, doing business in many waters, these men have seen the works of the Lord, and his wonders in the deep. He speaks, and the stormy wind arises, and its waves are lifted up. They go up to the heavens, and go down to the depths. Their soul melts because of troubles. They are troubled. They stagger as a drunkard, and all their wisdom is swallowed up. And they cry to the Lord in their affliction, and he brings them out of their distresses. And he commands the storm, and it is calmed into a gentle breeze, and its waves are still. And they are glad, because they are quiet. And he guides them to their desired haven. Proverbs chapter 23, verses 25 through 28. Let thy father and thy mother rejoice over thee, and let her that bore thee be glad. My son, give me thine heart, and let thine eyes observe my ways. For a strange house is a vessel full of holes, and a strange well is narrow. For such a one shall perish suddenly, and every transgressor shall be cut off. The Holy Gospel according to St. John, chapter 2. And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called, and his disciples to the marriage. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus saith unto him, They have no wine. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. His mother saith unto the servants, Whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. And there were set there 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of the purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. Jesus saith unto them, Fill the water pots with water, and they fill them up to the brim. And he saith unto them, Draw out now, and bear unto the governor of the feast. And they bear it. When the ruler of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, and knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew, the governor of the feast called the bridegroom, and saith unto him, Every man at the beginning doth set forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse, but thou hast kept the good wine until now. This beginning of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed on him. After this he went down to Capernaum, he and his mother and his brethren and his disciples, and they continued there not many days. And the Jews' Passover was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves, and the changers of money sitting. And when he had made a scourge of small cords, he drove them all out of the temple, and the sheep, and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money, and overthrew the tables, and said unto them that sold doves, Take these things hence, make not my Father's house a house of merchandise. And his disciples remembered that it was written, The zeal of thine house hath eaten me up. Then answered the Jews, and said unto him, What sign showest thou unto us, seeing that thou doest these things? Jesus answered and said unto them, Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Then said the Jews, 46 years was this temple in building, and wilt thou rear it up in 3 days? But he spake of the temple of his body. When therefore he was risen from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this unto them, and they believed the scripture, and the word which Jesus had said. Now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover, in the feast day, many believed in his name, when they saw the miracles which he did. But Jesus did not commit himself unto them, because he knew all men, and needed not that any should testify of man, for he knew what was in man.